Rio de Janeiro, September 1972. The Santa Teresa neighborhood was waking up slowly on that Monday morning. By 8 a.m., the heat was already pressing down. That humid, sticky heat Rio wears like a second skin. On the cobblestone streets, vendors pushed carts loaded with mangoes, guavas, and green coconuts. Pigeons fought over crumbs beneath the bakery tables on the corner of Almirante Alexandrino Street. Children ran down the steep alley that opened into a small dirt square, where a warehouse with a metal roof was opening its wide doors for the morning. The warehouse had no name on the front. It didn't need one. Everyone in Santa Teresa knew what happened there from Monday to Saturday, from 7 to 11 a.m. The exposed brick walls were covered with black and white photographs, berimbas hanging from sisal ropes, and a faded banner that read, Capoeira Angola, Tradition, Resistance, Honor. The polished concrete floor carried the color of years of training, marks of bare feet, cushioned falls, and endless jinga repeated until it became instinct. Outside, a yellow taxi struggled up the steep street and stopped in front of the warehouse. The driver stared through the window with a confused expression, as if certain there had been a mistake in the address. The passenger paid the fare, stepped out slowly, and stood on the sidewalk for a few seconds. He looked at the warehouse, looked at the banner, heard the sound of the marimba coming from inside, and walked in. Her name was Valdite Santos Ferreira. She was 31 years old, 172 centimeters tall, and weighed 74 kilograms of muscle trained since the age of 7 in the cultural Quilombo of South del Rey, where capoeira was not a sport or a tourist show. It was survival encoded in movement, a survival system Africans had hidden inside dance, so slave masters would never realize they were being trained for war. Valdite had learned capoeira before she learned to read. Her master, Mestre Page, Jose Nascimento Filho, 62 years old, had trained more than 300 capoeiristas over 40 years of teaching. He said she was the most complete student to ever pass through his warehouse. And Mestre Page was not a man who gave easy praise. At 20, Valdite had won 3 consecutive regional capoeira challenges in Salvador, something no woman had done before. At 24, she represented Brazil in a cultural exhibition in Portugal, leaving an audience of 300 breathless with a sequence of movements that mixed foundational jinga with chain sweeps that dropped 3 sparring partners in under 40 seconds. At 28, she moved to Rio and opened the Santa Teresa warehouse with money it had taken her 6 years to save. The place had 62 regular students, police officers, dock workers, university students, and 2 dancers from the municipal theater who came every Tuesday and Thursday. Valdite didn't charge those who couldn't pay. She charged double to those who could. Her capoeira was pure Angola, the oldest, lowest, most deceptive form. Capoeira Angola doesn't rise up. It goes down. The game happens close to the ground, with the body nearly horizontal, arms supporting weight, feet spinning at knee level. To someone who doesn't know it, it looks like dancing. Anyone who has been swept by capoeira Angola knows it isn't. Her philosophy was simple. The ground is capoeira's territory. Any martial art that depends on distance and upright posture is already lost once the game drops low. She was right. By September 1972, Valdite Santos Ferreira had not lost a single challenge in 14 years of capoeira. 23 direct confrontations against capoeiristas from other schools, judokas, and even an amateur boxer who underestimated a low sweep and woke up on the floor without understanding what had happened. 23 fights, no defeats. When the foreigner walked through the warehouse gate that morning, Valdite was in the center of the room, her back to the entrance, teaching the basic jinga to a group of beginners. She didn't turn around immediately. The marimba played by Mestre Page, seated in the corner, suddenly stopped. The silence was the warning. The man who entered was 1.72 meters tall, 140 pounds, 63 kilograms. A short-sleeved white shirt, simple black pants, leather sandals, neatly cut black hair, slightly almond-shaped eyes, and a completely relaxed posture. The kind of posture people mistake for laziness, when in fact, it is the opposite. The body of someone who wastes no energy on unnecessary tension. He stopped at the open gate and looked around with genuine curiosity. He looked at the berimbas on the walls, the photographs, and the students who had stopped training to stare at him. He smiled softly, not the smile of someone trying to impress anyone, but of someone who simply found what he was seeing beautiful. One of the older students, Rodrigo, 26, a sculptor by day and capoeirista by morning, approached him with a raised eyebrow. "Are you looking for someone?" The foreigner answered first in English, then in broken Portuguese, with an accent that mixed Cantonese and American tones. "I heard the marimba from down the hill. I wanted to see." Rodrigo looked at the others. A small laugh rippled through the beginners. A tourist who had heard a marimba in the street and decided to walk in as if Mestre Pages' warehouse were a postcard attraction. Valdite turned around. She looked the foreigner up and down with the objectivity of someone who had spent her whole life evaluating opponents. 63 kilograms. No visible muscles under the shirt. An awkward way of standing still, as if his feet weren't quite sure where to land. "You can come in," she said, "but take off your shoes." The foreigner looked down, looked at everyone's bare feet, and took off his sandals without ceremony. He stepped onto the polished concrete and looked around as if he were in a museum. From his corner, Mestre Page watched everything in silence. He had spent 72 years reading people, and the old man noticed something in the foreigner's feet the moment they touched the floor. Something in the way his weight spread, the way his toes settled onto the surface. That was not how a tourist stood, but the old man said nothing. The foreigner watched the training for about 20 minutes. He stood near the wall, arms crossed, observing the jinga, the fundamentals. The Rota Valdite opened for the more advanced students. When the marimba played and two experienced capoeiristas entered the circle, he leaned forward ever so slightly, a detail no one noticed except Mestre Page. After the Rota, Valdite walked over. She dried her hands on a towel, wearing the expression of someone who already knew what was about to happen before it happened. "Where are you from?" she asked. She smiled. "Want to try?" she asked. It wasn't a friendly offer, it was an assessment. The foreigner looked at the empty Rota in the center of the warehouse, then at the marimba in Mestre Pages' hands, then back at Valdite. "All right," he said. At that moment, Rodrigo said out loud what everyone was thinking. "She'll take you down in 20 seconds, he said, laughing without malice, like someone announcing the obvious result of a simple equation. Valdite didn't deny it. She simply kept watching the foreigner with that closed-off expression of constant evaluation. The foreigner looked at Rodrigo, then at Valdite. 20 seconds is a long time, he said. And in that moment, it wasn't clear whether he was agreeing with Rodrigo or disagreeing. Have you ever been underestimated? Bruce Lee had many times, but he never hesitated. Not because he was unbeatable, but because he had prepared himself for moments like that long before they arrived. If you've ever been underestimated and didn't know what to do, the problem wasn't bad luck. It was lack of preparation. That's exactly what Bruce Lee's 5 secret rules are meant to teach. As a thank you to our subscribers for the success of our ebook, The Secret Bruce Lee Code, we're making this new ebook available for free for a limited time. Just click the link in the bio, enter your name and email, and you'll receive Bruce Lee's 5 secret rules for free. Now back to the story. The Rota was opened. Mestre Page began to play the marimba in a slow rhythm, the rhythm of Angola, the kind that sounds calm but hides a trap in the very next beat. 2 students clapped along at the sides. The sound filled the metal warehouse, and everyone else stopped talking. Valdite stepped into the Rota first. She began to jinga, that continuous movement of weight, hips, and feet that in capoeira Angola is attack, defense, and observation all at once. Her jinga flowed like breathing. There were 14 years of jinga in that movement. Every kilogram of strength in her hips, every transfer of weight between her feet, was instinct built through hundreds of thousands of repetitions. The foreigner stepped into the Rota after her, and this was the first thing no one expected. He didn't jinga. He stood still, completely still, feet slightly apart, knees softly bent, arms loose at his sides. No capoeira movement, no attempt to imitate the jinga. He simply stood there, watching Valdite with absolute focus, as if the only thing in the world was her body in motion. Rodrigo snorted. He doesn't even know how to jinga. Mestre Page stopped playing for half a second, then continued. Valdit moved first. She launched with an O, that lateral rolling movement typical of capoeira Angola, almost crawling, throwing the body sideways and positioning the foot in a low arc to sweep the opponent's base. It was elegant, fast, and extremely difficult to defend against if you didn't know capoeira, because the attack doesn't come from above like a conventional kick. It comes from the side and from below, from where fighters trained in conventional combat aren't used to looking. Valdit's foot passed 10 centimeters from the foreigner's ankle. Past. He had moved with a single 40-centimeter sidestep. No jump, no retreat, no dramatic motion, just one step. At the exact instant her foot arrived, as if he knew exactly where her foot would be before it got there. Valdit recovered in half a second and looked at him. For the first time, her expression changed. Not much, just the slightest widening of the eyes. She came again, this time with the sequence that had dropped the amateur boxer 2 years earlier. Jinga to the right to draw the eye. A level change into queda de rins, dropping almost to the floor sideways while supporting herself on one hand. From there, she fired a Mailua de Compasso, the horizontal spinning kick that comes from low to high, aimed at the knee or hip. No one who doesn't understand the mechanics of the movement can defend it, because the angle of attack doesn't exist in any other martial art. The leg spins horizontally, close to the ground, through a 180-degree arc. The foreigner saw her drop. He took one step back. He saw the kick coming, leaned his torso backward at an angle that didn't seem physically possible for someone built like him, and her foot passed 5 centimeters under his chin. Silence filled the warehouse. Mestre Page stopped playing. Valdit rose slowly from the floor and stared at the foreigner. And for the first time in 14 years of capoeira, Valdit Santos Ferreira felt something she couldn't name in that moment, but years later would describe as, the ground disappeared. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Over the next 2.5 minutes, every second was remembered in detail by all 17 people in that warehouse for the rest of their lives. Something happened that Santa Teresa's capoeira had never seen before, and something that Mestre Page, 72 years of martial arts in his hands, had only seen once before, decades earlier, in a story he rarely told, and that no one was ever sure was true. Valdit attacked with everything. It wasn't recklessness. It wasn't anger. It was professionalism. The cold decision of an experienced fighter that this unknown opponent demanded her best from the very first second. She came in with the full sequence she used for her most serious challenges. Pure Angola Jinga to create rhythm. A low negativa to force the opponent's eyes downward. A heel sweep to take out the support leg. And an immediate transition into a high armada in case the opponent tried to escape upward. It was a chain of 4 movements attacking high and low at once, leaving zero room for escape for any fighter who didn't specifically know the grammar of capoeira Angola. The problem was, the foreigner wasn't using the grammar of any martial art anyone there had ever seen. He didn't block. He didn't jump. He didn't retreat in a straight line. For every movement Valdit made, he had a response that seemed to come from nowhere. Not kung fu, not jiu-jitsu, not boxing. Just the smallest possible movement at the most precise possible instant. A level of efficiency so absolute it looked absurd. Every adjustment placed him exactly outside the reach of her attacks, without wasting a single millimeter of energy. The foreigner wasn't reading Valdit's techniques. He was reading her body, her feet, her hips, her shoulders, her neck. Advanced capoeiristas know the secret of capoeira Angola. The next move is already announced, and the current one, a body dropping into negativa, is already pointing toward where the sweep will go. Anyone who can read that language can respond before the movement arrives. The foreigner was reading that language in real time, in a martial art he had never studied, the first time he had ever seen it live. Rodrigo had stopped talking. The students had stopped breathing. Valdit's sequence reached the 4th movement, the high armada, the spinning kick that closes off the escape route after the low sweep. It was a kick driven by the full force of the hips of a 74-kilogram woman, spun through 180 degrees, aimed at the side of her opponent's head. And then the foreigner did something no one could explain in the hours that followed. Instead of stepping back, he stepped in. He entered the kick's radius, closing the distance from 2 meters to 30 centimeters in half a step. and Valdid's leg sliced through empty air. All that force, with no target, like a sword cutting through empty air. And then he was inside, 30 centimeters away. His face was level with her shoulder. His hands were open, one near her elbow, the other near her wrist, not grabbing, just placed. She could no longer Jenga. The space that capoeira needed to exist had disappeared. They stayed like that for maybe 3 seconds. 3 seconds in which everyone in the warehouse held their breath. Then he stepped back. He opened the space again, returned to where he had been before, standing still, arms loose at his sides, looking at her. Mestre Page had stopped playing 40 seconds earlier. No one had asked him to stop. He had stopped because the berimbau was interfering with something that needed to be heard in silence. Valdid stared at the foreigner for a long moment. "Who taught you that?" she asked. He thought for a second. "Water," he said. "If you've made it this far, then you already know this story doesn't end in defeat. Leave a like now. It helps the channel keep bringing stories like this. And stay a little longer, because what happens in the next chapter of that morning transforms everything you've seen so far into something completely different. What happened next lasted 2 more hours. Valdid told the students to keep training and sat down with the foreigner at a wooden table in the corner of the warehouse, where there was always a bottle of water and 2 glasses. Mestre Page walked over slowly. The old man never rushed. He sat on the other side. The foreigner's name was Bruce Lee. He was 31 years old, born in San Francisco, raised in Hong Kong, living in Los Angeles, an actor, filmmaker, and, as Valdid took time to fully understand, the creator of a martial arts system he had been developing for the previous 12 years. A system built on a premise that capoeira Angola had reached by another path 300 years earlier. Movement should be the response to movement, not the application of a preset form. Bruce had not arrived at the warehouse by accident. He was in Rio de Janeiro for meetings about the South American distribution of Fist of Fury. The film had been released in Hong Kong earlier that year with unexpected success. He had 3 free days before his return flight and asked a local producer, Marcos Ventura, to recommend a place where he could see real Brazilian martial arts, not something made for tourists. Marcos gave him the warehouse's address. "Why did you step in when you didn't know what would happen?" Valdid asked. Bruce thought for a moment. "I always step in when I don't know what will happen," he said. "That's the only time you really learn something." Valdid looked at Mestre Page. The old man wore the expression she knew well, the face of someone agreeing with something he had never put into words, but had always known to be true. According to Rodrigo's account, written down years later, the conversation that followed was the deepest discussion about martial arts that Warehouse had ever witnessed, and it had witnessed many. Bruce asked about negativa. He wanted to understand the mechanics of how the body dropped low without losing mobility. Valdid demonstrated. Bruce watched 3 times, then tried. On the 4th attempt, he was doing it reasonably well. By the 10th, he was doing it well. Years later, Rodrigo said it was the most unsettling thing he had seen in 30 years of capoeira. A foreigner absorbing the central movement of capoeira Angola in 40 minutes of watching and trying, without technical vocabulary, without formal instruction. Valdid asked about the entry he had made, the step inside the kick's radius, closing distance instead of widening it. Capoeira Angola had a similar concept called corpo fechado, the idea that sometimes the only way out is toward danger, not away from it. But Bruce's execution had been different, more economical, with no wasted movement. "You have no form," she said. It wasn't criticism. It was observation. "I have all forms," he said. "That's why I don't need any one of them." Mestre Page, silent for over an hour, spoke for the first time. In the slow Portuguese of the Minas countryside, he said, "That's what we call a clean game. When you have nothing to hide, the body becomes honest." Bruce looked at the old man for a long time, then answered in English, because he couldn't find the exact word in Portuguese. "That's it. That's exactly it." Before leaving, Bruce asked to watch a full capoeira Angola rota, with berimbau, cacique, pandeiro, and the best students, uninterrupted. Valdid opened the rota. Mestre Page played for 40 minutes. Bruce stood in the corner of the warehouse the entire time, with the same absolute attention that had unsettled everyone that morning. He took no notes, no photographs. He simply watched. When it ended, he walked over to Valdite and said something she repeated in interviews, classes, and conversations with students for the next 30 years. You discovered the same thing I did. You just got there first. It took Valdite 2 days to fully understand what he meant. When she finally did, she went to Mestre Page. The old man said, "I know. I saw it the moment he stepped on the floor." Valdite Santos Ferreira continued teaching capoeira Angola in Santa Teresa for another 28 years, until 2000, when the warehouse was expropriated for an urban redevelopment project that never happened. She trained more than 400 students and never lost another challenge. In 1987, in an interview with a martial arts magazine in Sao Paulo, she was asked about the most important moment of her career. The interviewer expected a title, a championship, a specific victory. She answered, "One September morning in 1972, when a 63-kilogram man taught me that I didn't know everything about the ground." The journalist asked what exactly she had learned. She thought for a moment, then said, "When you dominate a territory, you stop seeing what exists outside it, and what lies outside is where the real game happens." "Did you win the confrontation?" the journalist asked. "There was no confrontation," she said. "There was a conversation. I just didn't know that when it began." To truly understand what happened in that warehouse, not just as an anecdote, but as a principle, you have to understand what Bruce Lee had been building in the years before that September morning. What Bruce called Jeet Kune Do was not a martial art in the conventional sense. Traditional martial arts, kung fu, karate, judo, boxing, are systems of forms. Each has a vocabulary of movements mastered through repetition until they become automatic. The intelligence of the system lives in the forms. But Bruce had identified something with clinical precision even in his 20s. Forms can also become prisons. Karate knows how to block from above. Judo knows how to unbalance through weight. Capoeira knows how to attack from below and from unexpected angles. Each system is brilliant within its own vocabulary and vulnerable outside it. Bruce had spent 12 years building a system that didn't depend on vocabulary at all. A system that was, in his own words, the honest expression of the individual, the movement the moment demands, without being filtered through a learned form. To get there, he had studied everything. Western boxing, European fencing, Greco-Roman wrestling, American wrestling, Thai kickboxing. He filmed and analyzed movement in slow motion, measured angles, calculated force vectors, spoke with physicists about biomechanics. And he reached the same conclusion Capoeira Angola had reached through a completely different path 3 centuries earlier. Capoeira Angola was born in Brazil between the 16th and 17th centuries, created by enslaved Africans who needed to train for combat without slave owners realizing it was combat. So they hid martial art inside dance. Attack looks like dance. Defense looks like play. The whole system is built on ambiguity. You never know whether the next movement is a strike, an evasion, or a trap. Capoeira Angola's form is not fixed. It is a form that simulates having no form. That is why Mestre Page stopped playing the moment he saw Bruce step on the floor. He recognized the principle. 2 completely different paths, one from Taoist philosophy of emptiness and adaptation, the other from the survival needs of enslaved people in colonial Brazil, had arrived at the same place. The greatest freedom in a fight is having no form your opponent can anticipate. Water. Bruce had said that morning when Valdite asked who had taught him. Water has no shape. Water takes the shape of the container. Put it in a cup, it becomes the cup. Put it in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Put it in boxing, it becomes boxing. Put it in capoeira, it becomes capoeira. You cannot trap water because it has no shape to trap. Capoeira Angola discovered this through the need to survive slavery. Bruce discovered it through 12 years of systematic study of combat biomechanics. Valdite had spent 14 years being the best in her territory. And that September morning, a 63-kilogram man entered her territory and made the territory disappear. Not with greater force, not with superior technique inside capoeira's vocabulary, but through the complete absence of a fixed vocabulary. That was not defeat. It was demonstration. And perhaps that is what that September morning in Santa Teresa still has to teach us. Sometimes the highest form of mastery is not proving you are better. It is recognizing in someone else A truth you arrived at by a different road. There was no winner that morning. Only recognition. Capoeira Angola says, deceive to survive. Bruce Lee said, be water. The language was different. The truth was the same.